Well, there have been calls across the country to defund police in the wake of the George Floyd murder, with people calling instead for community policing. But our guest on today's Community Conversation tells me that better law enforcement is built around better relationships with the community. And that's a concept that's been in place in our area since the 1990s. Tony Taylor is the police chief of Williamston, and he also serves South Carolina on the Law Enforcement Training Council.
I started in 1984 under Sheriff Johnny McBrown, and in the early 90s we started the concept of community policing. And basically what it looked like is that as an officer you were assigned to a community, but not just assigned to that community, you was there to become a part of that community. And so what you did is not just deal with the issues issues you had to deal with as far as law violators, but you also had to begin to know the people in the community, to know the stakeholders in the community. So that was one of the things that we started working with.
And kind of helping people resolve problems because you've got the relationship, they tell you things?
Exactly. One of the things was building trust with the community and letting the community know that we were there for the long term, and letting the community know that we needed them to buy into us as well as we had to buy into them. So it was a relationship building with the community, and then through that process we learned that the other factors, not just the crime problems, but the other issues they had to deal with. For example, abandoning buildings, maybe overgrowth in the community, the overgrowth in the streets or street problems and different things like that. And we were able to connect them with the proper agencies to get things done.
Chief Taylor, in the wake of the conversations that have been had since the George Floyd murder, what do you feel like a law enforcement officer needs to look like?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to look at is that I believe that we are a guardian of the community, but I also believe that we can be a warrior when we need to be a warrior. And I think now that sometime when I'm looking at situations, I think a lot of times is that sometimes it seems that we're more 80% a warrior and 20% of a guardian. So I want to reverse that, and I believe that it's in our heart's desire that we are the guardians of our communities, and we're part of that community.
And you talk about building trust. One of the things that the community needs to know is that they can trust those law enforcement officers. But in South Carolina, there is a mechanism to keep people off the street who shouldn't be police officers.
Yes, it's, I'm on the training council, the Law Enforcement Training Council, which we have oversight of the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. And one of the things that we do is we look at certifications. When an agency turns someone in for a misconduct, they have an administrative hearing, and based on that hearing, we as a Law Enforcement Training Council decide if that person should keep their certification or should they not. And so that's one of the things that we're doing. And on top of that, we actually are putting those names into a national database as well. So we want to make sure that if there's a bad cop in South Carolina, and if we know about it in South Carolina, we want every state to know that this guy should not be wearing that badge. So those are some of the things that we're doing here in South Carolina.
And Chief Taylor says that experience has taught him that effective community policing also requires individual citizens in every community to reach out and build positive relationships with law enforcement officers. He says the overwhelming majority of law enforcement officers want to make a positive difference in the communities they serve. So he says, when you see an officer, say hello and start a conversation.